Morning, Rick Lakai, State Street Global Advisors, Global CIO, joining us this morning on Bloomberg Radio and on television this morning. So I thank you for the double hit for Bloomberg this morning, taking us through the markets, of course. Okay, we're coming to the end of this hour. We're going to hand over to Bloomberg Daybreak out of the US in a moment. And so I want to leave you with the markets in Europe, up 0.6%. We had a bigger jump at the start of European trading at the beginning of June, but we come back in still positive though. The FTSE 100 gains more than 1%. The euro trades at 1.11 this morning, stronger 0.3%. A weaker dollar, and US futures, if you're starting to look to the US Open, down 0.2% on the S&P 500. This is Bloomberg.
If you have to drive, then it's more important than ever to watch your speed. As London starts to reopen, there are going to be more people on our streets. There'll be more people cycling, more people walking to work or to the shops. If you must drive, avoid the morning and evening peaks when the roads will be busier. We want the streets to be safe for everyone, all the time. So watch your speed. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone,
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There's going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night. There's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown! Search classic game replays to listen for free.
Wanna bet football can make you feel nostalgic?
Playing days are over, so...
On the podcast, NFL Alumni Lounge, Charlie Booth sits down with retired NFL legends to talk about their careers, life after football, and everything in between.
This is Darren Waller. Good to have you.
Yes, sir. It's good to be here.
Dana White, welcome to the Alumni Lounge.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Big member of our NFL alumni family, the CEO of the XFL, Mr. Oliver Luck.
Charlie, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
We're here with the president, Mr. Eric Price. Good to see you.
Search NFL Alumni Lounge on TuneIn to listen. Capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios, this is Bloomberg Daybreak for Monday, June 1st, 2020. Coming up this hour.
Protests hammer cities across the country following the death of George Floyd.
Violent clashes include vandalism, torch police cars, and thousands of arrests.
As tensions rise, President Trump meets with governors, law enforcement, and national security officials.
A 4th day of protests against police brutality kept New York City on edge. Plus, New Jersey will reopen sectors of the state from the coronavirus lockdown. I'm Michael Barr. More ahead.
I'm John Stashower in sports. NBA players react to the protests in a response to the baseball players as they try to make a labor deal with owners.
That's all straight ahead on Bloomberg Daybreak. On Bloomberg 1130 New York, Bloomberg 99.1 Washington, D.C., Bloomberg 106.1 Boston, Bloomberg 960 San Francisco, Sirius XM 119, and around the world on BloombergRadio.com and via the Bloomberg Business app.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow.
And I'm Nathan Hager. Bloomberg Daybreak is brought to you by Witham. For 45 years, Witham has been committed to helping businesses be in a position of strength. For guidance on business interruption, continuity issues, and remote workplace solutions, visit Witham.com.
U.S. futures slightly lower to start the week. It is 5:01 on Wall Street, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 10 points. Dow futures down 68. NASDAQ futures down 48. The DAX in Germany is little change. The CAC in Paris is up 0.9%, and so is the FTSE 100. Nikkei 225 in Japan gained 0.8%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong up 3.33%. 10-year Treasury down 2/30 seconds, yield 0.66%. The yield on the 2-year 0.16%. NYMEX crude oil is down 0.6% or 19 cents at $35.30 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.2% or $3.50 at $17.4820 an ounce. The euro 1.1140 against the dollar. The yen 107.41. Nathan.
Karen, we are coming off the 6th day of protests in cities across the country. That's the sound of police in Minneapolis firing flashbangs last night to disperse protesters after the city's curfew went into effect. Meantime, in New York City, demonstrations continued for a 4th day. There were peaceful demonstrations across the city, interspersed with some violent clashes that included vandalism, torched police cars, and dozens of arrests. It was a similar scene in Boston. Peaceful rallies turned violent as protesters hit police with bottles, damaged vehicles, and looted stores throughout downtown Crossing and the Back Bay. Demonstrators took to the streets in dozens of cities, including Chicago and Los Angeles, to protest the death of George Floyd at the hands of a Minneapolis police officer.
At the same time in Washington,
no peace! No peace! No peace! No peace!
Chants of no justice, no peace heard as part of demonstrations outside the White House. For the very latest, we bring in Amy Morris from our Bloomberg 99.1 Washington newsroom.
Angry protesters took over the streets of Washington, D.C. last night, some of them setting fires, vandalizing buildings and cars, and looting just blocks from the White House. Historic St. John's Church outside the White House was vandalized and set on fire. Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser activated the National Guard. The Justice Department has now deployed the U.S. Marshals Service and agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration to supplement those National Guard troops outside the White House. Amy Morris, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Amy, thank you. Unrest across the country took center stage on the Sunday talk shows.
Let's come together. Let's be prayerful, especially on a Sunday morning, about how we can put our differences aside, because this is the greatest country in the world, and we want to live up to the legacy of America.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi on ABC's This Week, where we also heard from Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar.
We are living in a country that has a two-tiered justice system, and people are sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Omar says the latest examples of police brutality against African Americans are shocking but typical.
We are living in a country that has truly, for a long time, brutalized African Americans.
President Trump's head of national security says the White House stands in solidarity with George Floyd. National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien blames violent protests on Antifa, a loosely organized movement that is a frequent target of conservative critics.
It's the violent Antifa radical militants that are coming out under cover of night, traveling across state lines, using military-style tactics to burn down our cities. And they're especially targeting the most vulnerable parts of our cities.
Now, there were no public remarks from President Trump over the weekend, though he was active on Twitter, saying he'll label Antifa a domestic terrorist organization. He threatened protesters with tweets about vicious dogs and ominous weapons and blamed liberal governors and mayors for the unrest. The president plans today to meet with Attorney General William Barr before convening a teleconference with governors, law enforcement, and national security officials. There are currently no public remarks on the president's schedule.
The president's comments on Twitter are not helping the situation, according to D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser.
I think that the president has a responsibility to help calm the nation, and he can start by not sending divisive tweets that are meant to hearken to the segregationist past of our country.
Speaking on NBC's Meet the Press, Mayor Bowser singled out the president's tweet about vicious dogs as a reference to segregationists that let dogs out on women and children in the South. Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms also took issue with the president's comments. She spoke on Face the Nation from CBS.
What I like to hear from the president is leadership, and I would like to hear a genuine care and concern for our communities and where we are with race relations in America.
This week, Meet the Press and Face the Nation can all be heard Sundays on Bloomberg Radio.
Now, despite the protests, U.S. futures had been gaining overnight. Now they're lower after a Bloomberg News exclusive on the state of trade relations between the U.S. and China. Sources say the Chinese government is telling state-run agriculture companies to pause purchases of U.S. farm goods. The move is said to be tied to Beijing evaluating the ongoing escalation of tensions over Hong Kong.
At the same time, China is accusing the U.S. of undermining bilateral relations and, quote, disregarding facts when it comes to Hong Kong. President Trump last week moved to rescind the city's special trading status. China says the measure would gravely interfere with China's internal affairs. Beijing says any words or actions that hurt China's interests will be met with firm counterattacks. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news, and this is Bloomberg.
Okay, Karen, thank you. It is 5:07 on Wall Street. Let's bring in Michael Barr for more on what's going on around the world. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Nathan. Thousands of people marched peacefully, for the most part, in New York City Sunday over the death of George Floyd. Many protesters and officers tried to keep the peace after days of unrest that left police cars burned and hundreds of people under arrest. Last night, some stores were looted. The NYPD believes violence has been deliberately stirred up by outside groups trying to hijack the protests. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo called for protesters to use common sense.
That violence never works. How many protests have we had? How many nights have we gone through like last night?
Over 30 NYPD officers were hurt over the weekend. Cuomo says the National Guard is on standby. Yesterday, thousands of people marched through multiple neighborhoods, chanting, kneeling in the street, and falling silent for a minute in front of the police station in Times Square to remember the people killed by police. Mayor Bill de Blasio says he has no plans to impose a curfew.
When you add up how many things were happening in how many places all over this city, it says something about New York City. It says something about the people of New York City. It says something about the NYPD, that thank God there was no loss of life. There were no major injuries.
De Blasio also reacted to a video of two police cruisers plowing into protesters in Brooklyn, saying, "I did not like what I saw one bit. I don't want to ever see that again." Among the hundreds of protesters arrested over the weekend was Mayor de Blasio's daughter. Chiara de Blasio was arrested for unlawful assembly with a group of protesters at 12th Street near Broadway. She was given a desk appearance ticket. The number of COVID-19 cases in New York State continues to decline. Governor Cuomo.
Net change in hospitalizations down again, intubations down again, number of new deaths still dropping.
There were 56 new deaths reported in New York State from the coronavirus. In New Jersey, more businesses in the state under lockdown can begin reopening soon. The governor said horse racing can begin as soon as next weekend, while child care centers can open on June 15th. In Connecticut, hair salons and barbershops are reopening today. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Michael. It's 5:09 on Wall Street. Time now for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Good morning, John Stashower.
And good morning, Nathan. It's the start of a big week. If baseball is to come to an agreement on how much players should make in a shortened season without fans, last week was the owner's proposal, loudly panned by players who are now making their pitch back. The details do not sound like something that will lead to a deal. They want full pay for the games being played. They admit pay for those making $10 million a year or more can be deferred, but only if the postseason can't be played, and the payback should come with interest. They say if a player chooses not to play due to concerns about the virus, they should still be paid. They want more games, expanded playoffs in 2021. They pitch ideas to make baseball more popular, like an off-season all-star game and players mic'd up during games, but if there are no games in 2020 because of money, baseball figures to become significantly less popular in the years ahead. Some athletes were part of the weekend-long protest. The Celtics' Jaylen Brown drove 15 hours to his native Georgia to protest in Atlanta. Michael Jordan, for so long criticized for not speaking out about non-basketball issues, released a statement in the wake of the death of George Floyd. He said he's pained, saddened, and angry. Thabo Sefolosha of the Houston Rockets said George Floyd could have been him. Sefolosha in 2015 was wrongly attacked by New York police outside a Manhattan nightclub. They broke his leg. He sued, settled for $4 million, which he largely donated to charity. NASCAR, Bristol, Tennessee, the leaders, Chase Elliott and Joey Logano, crashed with a lap to go, and the race was won by Brad Keselowski. John Stashower, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
And John, let's talk for a second about what could have been in this week in the sports world. The NBA and NHL playoffs were scheduled to happen this week, along with the final leg of racing's Triple Crown. That was supposed to have happened on Saturday. Instead, the Belmont Stakes will be the Triple Crown's first race this year. It'll take place in about 3 weeks, June 20th, with no fans. And this would have been the second week of the French Open, with fourth-round matches, quarterfinals, semifinals, and the finals. S&P futures are down 6 points right now. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
Debbie Hart is...
We're Cadent. Keeping you and our people safe is our main focus, and our vital work must continue. You'll start to see more of us in your area as we increase our work to upgrade the gas pipes to keep the energy flowing into your homes and businesses. We may need to come into your home to complete this work, but rest assured our engineers are following all government guidance on PPE and social distancing. We continue to provide the critical gas emergency service, and if you smell gas, call 0800 111 999. To all other key workers, we would like to say a big thank you from everyone at Cadent. Cadent, your gas network.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath? Or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway? Or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage? Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
Emma, the UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free. Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed. Retrieve data fast. Scalability. Grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity. Easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
Here's Emily Chang on Bloomberg Technology.
With so many countries under lockdown around the world, that means there has been a growing backlog of legal cases. And with courts slowly starting to reopen up, this is a challenge. Joining us to talk about the bottleneck is Sunita Bali, partner at Perkins Coie law firm. We're seeing massive court backlogs. Talk to us about what this actually means.
You know, courts are trying to balance the safety concerns
for the public and court employees with the need to continue judicial operations. And one of the side effects has certainly been delays. There's been a variety of approaches taken by courts, state and federal courts across the country, as things continue to change rapidly and courts try to find ways to adapt to the constant changes. As you mentioned, some courts are already preparing to reopen. They're putting protective measures in place, such as requiring face coverings or taking temperatures prior to entering the courthouse. And they plan to have some proceedings go forward in business cases in person. Whereas other courts have transitioned to conducting hearings by telephone or video conference to keep things moving.
Hear more interviews like this one on Bloomberg Television, streaming live on Bloomberg.com and on the Bloomberg mobile app, or check your local cable listings. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen Moscow. U.S. stock index futures are lower this morning, while European shares hold on to modest gains after Chinese officials told agriculture companies to pause imports on some farm goods. There's no trading in Germany or Switzerland today, and we check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures are down 7 points this morning. Dow futures down 35. NASDAQ futures down 40. The DAX in Germany, well, no trading there today, as we said, and the FTSE 100 is up 1%. 10-year Treasury down 230 seconds, yield 0.65%. The yield on the 2-year 0.15%. NYMEX crude oil is down about 0.8% or 28 cents at $35.22 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 0.1% on $1.80 at $17.49.80 an ounce. The euro 1.1133 against the dollar. British pound 1.2414 and the yen 107.48. Today we are watching for reports on construction spending and manufacturing out at 10 o'clock Wall Street time. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Michael Barr with more on what's going on around the world. Michael.
Thank you very much, Karen. Tens of thousands of protesters have again taken to the streets across America. Peaceful demonstrations yesterday against police killings of black people have been overshadowed by unrest that quickly ravaged cities from Philadelphia to Los Angeles. A truck driver drove into demonstrators in Minneapolis, where George Floyd died after a white police officer put his knee on his neck for more than 8 minutes. Outside the White House, police fired tear gas and stun grenades into a crowd who lit fires in a street. Thieves in more than 20 California cities smashed into businesses and ran off with cell phones and TVs. Atlanta's mayor says 2 police officers have been fired and 3 others placed on desk duty over excessive use of force during a weekend protest incident. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Michael Barr. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
All right, Michael, thank you. It is 5:19 on Wall Street and live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Bloomberg Daybreak. Dennis Gartman is with us this morning, economist and former publisher of the Gartman Letter. At a pivotal moment, it seems, in this country, Dennis, there had been so much optimism in the markets surrounding the prospects for reopening the economy during the coronavirus pandemic. Now, with cities across the country, in many ways, literally on fire, what does this mean for the image of the United States as a place to invest?
It can't be good, Nathan. It just simply cannot be good. As I've always said in interviews and speeches and in writing, all economics boils down to the propensity of somebody to take action. And at the margin, when the last 2% of the sellers become buyers, or when the last 2% of the buyers become sellers, price changes. At the margin, one has to think that the propensity for money to move to the United States has been greatly reduced. I mean, if I were a German, if I were a Brit, if I were a Japanese investor, my propensity to move money to the United States would be almost nil. My propensity to take money out of the United States would be greatly enhanced. And I was surprised, I must admit, I was stunned last night, given the political circumstances that prevailed over the weekend, given the rioting, the eruption, the near revolutionary activities that have taken place across the country. When I was asked yesterday afternoon what I thought the Dow would open, I thought the futures would open 300, 400 lower. The fact that they only opened 250 lower was surprising to me. The fact that they actually got higher during the middle of the evening last night was even more surprising to me. I'm stunned by this. Is revolution and rioting supportive of stock prices? For some reason, it seems to be. It makes no sense, but that's what's happening.
And the interesting aspect of that as well is that now we've started to see futures in the United States turn lower on the news from our Bloomberg colleagues this morning that China is considering pausing some U.S. farm imports, particularly soy. It's interesting to see what the market appears to be focused on. It almost seems like it's all about China at this point.
Well, in the last hour and a half or 2 hours, it has become of China. What is interesting to me is that the bean futures overnight, corn futures overnight, have not gone demonstrably lower. One would have thought, given that news out of China, that soybeans would have fallen 20 or 30 cents per bushel, that corn would be down a nickel or a dime, that wheat would be down 15 or 20 cents, and yet they're very essentially unchanged. The markets seem to me to be as illogical and as strange as I have ever seen them in my 45 years of being involved.
When you talk about movement at the margins, what do you think would take investors just beyond the margins and changing their way of thinking? What do you think is driving market sentiment at this point?
Well, I think it's the Federal Reserve policies and the monetary authorities around the world are all being expansionary, and they should be, given the circumstances that prevail, given the coronavirus, given the rebellions, given the rioting in the United States, given the decline in employment, the rise in unemployment, whether it's here in the United States or in Europe, given the fact that everybody's optimistic this morning because the PMIs in Europe were a little bit better than expected, but they're still down below 50. The monetary authorities have to be expansionary, and the old rule is don't fade the Fed. I've tried to fade the Fed. It makes sense for me to fade the Fed, but fading the Fed has been in a losing proposition. So it is all monetary authority expansionary policy that is driving stock prices higher.
Do you see monetary policy expanding even further given the unrest we're seeing in the country right now? Does that move the Fed?
It has to. It cannot be. They cannot move off center. They have to continue to be expansionary. They have no choice at this point. So they can talk about allowing the Fed to slow down the purchases of bonds, but they have no choice. They have to be continuously expansionary. Us, the ECB, the Bank of China, the Bank of Canada, the Bank of England, they have no choice.
So what does that mean for Treasury yields? I mean, is there a possibility that if the Fed continues with the expansionary policy that it has been on, that we could see negative yields on Treasuries?
It is possible. At the short end of the curve, you could get down to, you could take it to negative. I think that the Fed doesn't want to do that. They've made their statements several times, and I think Mr. Powell has been openly non-supportive of the possibility of moving to negative rates. But short rates can go to near zero. At the long end of the curve, however, I could see long rates moving somewhat higher and the yield curve becoming far more positively sloped, which would help the banking community. So I think inflationary pressures, and they will be extant given the expansionary monetary policies eventually. All inflation is a monetary phenomenon. I still am a monetarist at heart. So the long end of the curve could see rates go higher. The short end of the curve could see rates go lower, and a much more positive sloped yield curve, which would be helpful to the banking system.
We're speaking with Dennis Gartman, economist and former publisher of the Gartman Letter, with us this morning on Bloomberg Daybreak. You have been watching the markets for decades. I wonder how you compare the moment we're in now with unrest in the country, concerns about the coronavirus continuing even as the economy reopens, to past crises we've gone through, the Occupy Wall Street movement, the 2008 crisis, 1968. How do you use those moments to compare how we could get through what we're experiencing now?
Well, we will get through this eventually. Let us hope that we shall get through this. I don't want to think otherwise. The closest to the approximation is what happened in 1968 to 1970 with the increased activity in the war in Vietnam, racial strife in Cleveland, the Watts conflagration. This is the closest thing I can imagine is what happened back then. And it took us several years to get through it. We will get through this, but those of us who make our living trading, we live from Tuesday to Tuesday. Sometimes you live from Tuesday morning to Tuesday afternoon in many instances. But the closest thing is the late 1960s and early 1970s. And let us, we got through that. We'll get through this. Let's hope.
A lot of the difference between those moments and the current one is the leadership in this country. The president over the weekend didn't make any public comments, but did do a lot of tweeting, talking about Antifa, the possibility of labeling it as a terrorist organization and taking a strong stance against the protesters, even outside the White House. How does the difference in presidential leadership affect how things could turn out here?
Well, let's first of all understand that I'm somewhat to the right of Genghis Khan politically and economically, and I did in fact vote. For Mr. Trump, but he has not handled this as well as I think previous presidents might have handled this. One would have hoped. Well, Mr. Reagan would have handled it demonstrably differently. He would have gone on national television and talked to the American people. The president probably should have done that rather than use tweets. And tweets are too short in nature, too cursive, too short. And I would have liked to have seen the president come on TV last night and say, "Look, we understand what happened in Minneapolis, but what is happening across the country is illogical and ill-advised, and we will not stand."